Hi, everyone. I'm going to get started in just a minute, letting people log back in. But if you are able to see and hear me, if you could give me a thumbs up or say hello in the chat, I would really appreciate it. Aw, thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Okay, I see people are still coming in. So as we're getting started, the first thing I'm going to say is that I will be or this is being recorded. So your faces and your names are not going to be included, but this is just for prosperity purposes, I suppose. But thank you so much for being here. My name is Mira Krivoshay. I am the Director of Health Promotion in the Wellness Center, and my pronouns are she, her. As you can see on the screen, we ask that you hopefully have logged in using your Loyola email. We understand that sometimes there are some technical issues, so if you need to log off and log back in and try again, that's totally fine. Just make sure you come on back. So let's go ahead and get started so that we can end on time. So this is active bystander training. This is our Speak Up, Step In 50-minute session, although I tend to end a little bit early, so lucky you. What we're going to do here today is talk about how to intervene in potentially dangerous situations, harmful situations, and we are going to be talking about alcohol. We're going to be talking about some issues related to discrimination or gender-based violence. We're not going to get into anything graphic. And so just as we go along today, if you feel things coming up for you, we just ask that you use whatever existing coping skills you already have to stay engaged with the material. I will remain on the webinar for a few minutes afterwards if you have anything you'd like to discuss with me privately. And if you do have anything to discuss privately, you can go ahead and use the Q&A feature. And I can take those questions at the end. Here we go. Oh, this is meant to be super interactive, so at times I am going to be asking you to enter into the chat. I am going to be doing some polls, so just remain engaged with me. This is meant to be more of a dialogue rather than a lecture. So why do we do active bystander training? Why are we asking and requiring you all to be here? The first one is just to raise your awareness of what it means to intervene and be a supportive rambler. The other goal is to increase your motivation to intervene when you see something problematic, give you the skills to actually intervene so that we can live in a safe environment. You know, there are no guarantees, but if we all take care of one another, Loyola is going to be a better and safer place. So go ahead, type in the chat. The student promise is about caring for 3 things. What are those 3 things? If you know what they are, go ahead and type them in the chat. Care for, oh, is the chat disabled? I'm sorry. Let me make sure. Okay, so people are putting in the Q&A. Great, that works for me. So care for yourself, care for others, and care for community. Wonderful, that's absolutely right. And so the student promise is really all about being an active bystander, right? It's about making sure that you're taking care of each other, yourself and your community. So it plays right into what being an active bystander is. What is a bystander? Who can answer that for me? Go ahead and put that in the Q&A. What is a bystander? What's the definition? Someone who watches something happen. Yep. Someone who's on the side of a situation, not directly involved, a watcher, a witness. Absolutely. Someone who stands by. Thank you. Yes, it is in the title. A bystander is someone who stands by and watches something happen. And it can be something really innocuous, like you are watching me all present right now, or you're watching a street performance, or you're, you know, just watching a movie or anything like that. That's a bystander. But sometimes being a bystander means you're witnessing something problematic. Like, let's say I'm presenting this and there was a Zoom bomb, right? And someone said something or did something inappropriate during this presentation. You'd still be a bystander, but you'd be watching something that was harmful or discriminatory. So sometimes it really matters that that you are standing by, but that you also intervene. So let's talk about a couple of few different real life situations. So the photo on the screen is of a student named Matt Sunshine. Matt was a first-year student at Northwestern, so the school just up the street here. And it was his first semester at school, and he decided to get into a drinking contest with some of his friends in the residence hall. And over the course of about 2 hours, Matt had 17 shots of vodka. And if you're not one who drinks, or even if you are, that's a lot of alcohol. Over the course of the 2 hours, people were coming in and out of his room. People were cheering him on. They were witnessing what was going on. And then at the end of the evening, 2 students had to cart Matt off to bed, put him to bed, left his dorm, said goodnight. Well, Matt was unconscious and he never woke up. He died from alcohol poisoning. This next incident happened here at Loyola in a very similar situation. There were 2 students, again in the dorm, who decided to engage in a drinking contest, again with vodka, go figure. And in this instance, what they did is they filled up 2 red Solo cups full of vodka. So go ahead in the Q&A, how many standard drinks or shots of vodka do you think are in 2 red Solo cups? 20, 10, 6, 2, 5. Let's see, 4. Okay, so mostly less than 20. Okay. I'm just looking to see if there's a right answer that I see here. I haven't seen a right answer yet. Okay, so it's 32. So each red Solo cup holds 16 shots of alcohol, basically. Okay. So again, that's a lot of alcohol. So in this circumstance, the 2 students, one was able to drink the full red Solo cup full of vodka and then immediately started to vomit everywhere. The other student somehow managed to drink both cups and then stumbled off to bed and, sort of left the scene. The student who was throwing up, again, this was in the residence hall, obviously creating a bit of a scene. The RAs got involved and they called Loyola EMS. Loyola EMS showed up, responded to the student and was carting the student off to the hospital when another student said, wait, before you leave, you need to go check on this other student. He had twice as much alcohol. You might want to go check on him. So they did. They went to that student's room. They found that student unresponsive. So they brought them to the hospital where he was in a coma for 2 days. He did wake up, but these are very similar stories with very different outcomes. So what's the difference between these 2 stories? It's pretty clear. There was someone who stepped in, right? There was someone who spoke up and said, listen, there's a student who you need to check on. And this bystander potentially saved a life. This next circumstance is a little bit more recent. So the person in this photo is Darnella Frazier. Darnella was the woman who videotaped the murder of George Floyd. And so in this specific instance, she did not get directly involved, but because of her interference or the way that she chose to intervene, which was to document what was happening, her evidence was brought into trial and the cops were held accountable for the murder of George Floyd. So not every situation are going to be these life or death situations. In fact, many of them hopefully won't be. But what these examples show is the power of someone intervening, the power of someone stepping in and potentially saving a life. So in the Q&A, I'm curious, what percentage of your peers do you think would intervene if they saw something problematic? So 50%, 25%, what percentage of your peers do you think would intervene? 50, 30, 5, 0, 75, 60. Okay, so a whole range here. I'd say in looking at this, it's around the 50 to 40, 45 range. Okay, some say 60. Great. Now I'm not going to poll you, but I'm guessing that if you all were to witness something problematic, you would choose to intervene. And when we polled students, we actually asked them, we said, how many of you would be willing to intervene if you saw something? 83% said, yes, I would step in, I would do something, but only 62% thought that their peers would intervene. So what this goes to show is that we actually are in a community where more people are willing to intervene than we think. And there's a reason why people don't intervene. Go ahead and put some of those reasons. Why don't you think people intervene in situations that a bystander would be helpful? They're afraid, they could get themselves in trouble, could be dangerous, scared of getting caught, fear of repercussion, bystander effect. Yay for AP psychology, we'll get to that. Diffusion of responsibility, yep, we'll get to that too. Social pressure, absolutely. Yes, fear of misinterpreting what they saw, absolutely. Reputation issues, interesting. So yes, there are a lot of valid reasons why people don't intervene, and we'll talk about how to potentially overcome some of those. But one of the reasons people don't intervene is due to the bystander effect. So the bystander effect basically says that the more people present, the less likely someone is going to intervene. So for example, if you're witnessing a carjacking, someone's trying to get into someone else's car, if there's a whole crowd around, it's less likely that someone will actually like call the police or say, hey, don't do that. Whereas if you were witnessing the same thing and it was just one person walking by, that person would be more likely to call for help. And we see this over and over again. It's called the diffusion of responsibility, where the more people that are present, the less responsible you personally feel because you think someone else is going to intervene. So how do you get around that? What do you do? What research indicates is that as soon as one person steps in, as soon as one person intervenes, everyone else sort of rallies around and starts to help. And I'll give you an example of that later on, but that's how you break the bystander effect. One person starts, other people jump in. So again, go ahead in the Q&A. We live so much of our lives now online. I'm curious, say yes or no. Not that you've personally experienced online harassment or abuse, but how many of you have witnessed? Actually, hold on. I think I have a poll about this. Yes, don't put it in the chat. I'm going to launch a poll. So the poll is, have you ever witnessed online harassment or abuse? Go ahead and answer that poll. And maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know what it is. That's okay too. Take another few seconds. Wait for our stragglers or those watching something else who aren't paying attention to answer. Great. Okay. I'm going to end the poll. We've got most people participating. And then I'm going to share with you. So about 69% of you have witnessed online harassment or abuse. That's a huge number. That's 143 of you have witnessed harm caused to someone else online. So online harassment can look like calling someone a name, being discriminatory against someone, bullying someone, maybe stalking someone online. Those are all things that can fall under online harassment and abuse. And we're seeing that a lot now. Like, I know that there are specific loyalist Snapchats that are or Snap groups that are not officially loyalist sanctioned, but that exist here, and that stuff is happening on them, and we aren't able to monitor them. And what we are going to do is talk a little bit later about ways that you can intervene when you do witness online harassment or abuse. So while we understand that there are a lot of reasons why people don't intervene, there are also reasons why people do intervene. The first one is that it's the right thing to do, right? You see someone hurt, you see someone in need of medical attention, you see someone about to be harmed. It's the right thing to do to intervene and help them out. There are also liability concerns. So a lot of sorority and fraternity life groups, for example, have risk management officers, and their whole goal is to make sure that nothing bad goes down at their events because they don't want to be liable for hurting someone else. People also intervene because maybe it's part of their reputation. Maybe there are these groups that you know of where like they don't let shit go down at their parties. Like, they are looking out for one another. So sometimes people intervene to maintain that reputation. So we've talked about the importance of intervening, but you're more likely to intervene if you know how to do it. So there are steps. So the first one is notice what's going on around you, interpret something as potentially problematic, assume that personal responsibility to step in, and then actually do that. So the first one is to notice what's going on around you. We are constantly being bombarded with messages and demands for our attention. I mean, we are walking to class, or we're driving home from work, or we're going home, and there are messages that we don't even notice that we're seeing. Like, I'm not going to call y'all out, but I bet there are some people on this webinar right now that are multitasking, right? And are not just studiously looking at me presenting this information. So you may be a little distracted. What I'm asking, as hard as it is, because I do it too, try to notice what's going on around you. Try to be present in whatever it is that you're participating in. And then if you do see something, interpret it as potentially problematic. So this is an example that came out a few years ago. It says, Ricky was just acting like he wasn't my boyfriend at the gym, saying to me, "You look nice in those leggings. Can I take you out sometime?" This girl that I don't know comes up to me and says, "Hey, you ready to leave?" I informed her he was my boyfriend, but girl, I appreciate you. So what's happening here? There's a couple that's at the gym. The guy decides, hey, I'm going to flirt. I'm going to pretend like I'm hitting on this girl that's actually my girlfriend. A bystander observes what's happening, notices it, says, maybe she's uncomfortable. I'm going to step in. And she was wrong, right? She misinterpreted. We recognized earlier that that's one of the reasons people don't intervene. But even though she got it wrong, the person that she showed care for appreciated that she stepped in. So even though you may not know what's going on, if you show care for someone and intervene, they're going to appreciate it because you showed care for their safety and for who they are. So notice what's going on around you and then interpret something as potentially problematic. But there are two caveats to that. Oftentimes when we're looking at who we think needs help in our society, we rely on stereotypes. So again, in the Q&A, who do we tend to associate needing help in our society? What are some of the stereotypes or characteristics of the people we think need help in our society? Women, females, drug addicts, low-income children, or the elderly. Yeah. So, right, the vulnerable in our society, which we often think of as being women, children, or the elderly. Who does this leave out? Who does this mean is not thinking that they need help? White people, men? Yeah, absolutely. So, absolutely. So when you're interpreting something as problematic, it's important that we're not leaving out men in the conversation. That if you're at a party and there's someone who's being plied with drinks, right? And maybe they're past the point where they can stand, or maybe they need medical attention. We're not thinking, oh, they're okay, they can handle their liquor, right? That we're looking out for everyone. We also need to think about, who do we think causes harm in our society? Who do we automatically are quick to maybe call the police on? Men? Strangers? People with power, people of color, homeless people? Yeah, absolutely. So this again ignores that there are some people who can still cause harm, right? Women can cause harm. They absolutely can. And so when you're noticing what's going on around you, interpreting something as problematic, make sure you're not relying on your stereotypes for when to intervene, right? And you're just looking at people for who may need help. And then you're assuming that personal responsibility to actually step in and break the bystander effect. So here's the story I was mentioning earlier. This was years ago. I was walking around the loop. I had just gone to a show and I was walking to the train, and I saw in the distance that there was someone on the ground, and I couldn't really see what was happening, but a lot of people were walking, it wasn't that late at night. So there were still people out, and people were walking back and forth and sort of looked at the person on the ground, but wasn't really doing anything. So as I got closer, I noticed that the person on the ground was seizing, right? This person did potentially look low income or homeless. It was hard to tell. But what I did is I saw what was happening and I said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" This person was unresponsive. So as I was engaging in that intervention, other people started to stop what they were doing. Someone else actually called for the police. I stayed until EMS arrived, the ambulance arrived, and was able to answer any questions. But what happened, right, is I broke the bystander effect. I assumed that personal responsibility, like, okay, clearly no one else is doing anything, but this person needs help. Doesn't matter why. I intervened, and then other people stopped and started to help as well. So I noticed that something bad was happening. I didn't care who it was, didn't matter why this person was on the ground seizing. They deserved support and some help, and I assumed that personal responsibility. So again, before you show up for someone else, it's really important that you take stock of your own capacity to show up. So first of all, what are the risks involved? Like, there was no harm to me to ask that person if they were okay. Maybe there's a physical fight happening. Maybe that changes the risks, right? Maybe then it's not important for you to like break up the fight. So again, what way, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, what's the best way to intervene in a given situation? And it can change depending on the circumstances. What are your own boundaries? Like maybe someone is, you have some trauma history in your past and it's just not something you can show up for. Okay, can you delegate someone else to intervene? And then grounding yourself before you entering in a situation, making sure that you're calm and you're not escalating a situation. So let's talk about how you can actually intervene in situations. And we call them the 5 Ds. So the first one is to be direct. Ask questions. Sir, are you okay? Do you need help? Are you feeling safe right now? Can I get you some water, right? Maybe you shouldn't have that other drink. So calling it what it is, like, hey, that was a racist comment, or that made me uncomfortable, or this person can't consent. If you do this to them, that's assault. Using I statements. So let's say you've noticed that your roommate's behavior has changed. So saying like, hey, I noticed that you haven't been eating or going to class. I'm worried about you. Is there something I can do to help? Another way to be direct is to use your body. Again, like not necessarily if there's a physical altercation going on, but sometimes if you're on public transportation or you see that someone's being catcalled or harassed on the street, just like walking in front of the person or going up next to them and walking along with them can help diffuse the situation. Now, being direct obviously is a powerful way of intervening, but it's not always the safest, right? And given the example of like, hey, that was a racist comment, maybe that's something you feel more comfortable saying to your brother or your sibling and not something you feel safe saying to a professor who has power. So what type of intervention you choose is going to depend on the relationship you have with the person, the power you have in the situation, the safety you have in a situation. And so it's not always going to be the best way to intervene, but let's talk about some others. Another way to intervene is to distract. So let's say there's a situation where I don't know why it's always the uncle, but let's say you're at a dinner party or you're at the Thanksgiving table and your uncle is about to say something that you are not okay with and is problematic. Just changing the subject, like, hey, let's talk about this awesome training that I went to about being an active bystander, or let's talk about a class that I have. Making a commotion. So let's say you're at a party and someone is making someone else uncomfortable for whatever reason, like maybe spilling your beer, right? Or getting a bunch of people together and being like, hey, let's go outside or whatever, turning the music up. That can be a way to intervene. If you're online, a way to distract is, let's say there's a comment that's not okay. Flooding the comments with some positive content is another way of intervening. So that's not the first thing your friend maybe sees when they open up their comments. So these are all ways to intervene. Another way to intervene is to delegate. So delegating can be a really helpful way of intervening, especially when there's a medical emergency. So let's say someone is maybe experiencing alcohol poisoning, or there's something happening where someone's being assaulted. So there are ways to get other people involved. So we call this delegating. And it can be to official channels. It doesn't have to be. But let's say there is someone who's experiencing alcohol poisoning or you're afraid for their safety. Getting Res Life involved if you're in the residence halls, calling for campus safety can be ways. Later on, there is something called the Cura Network. So this is an option. You can see the website there and a screenshot there. If there are students that are in trouble, or I don't mean in trouble, but like are facing difficulties, there are ways to submit a report so that they get additional outreach from the university. So maybe someone has not been going to class and you're really worried about them. You can come to this website and file what's called a behavioral concerns report, just indicating that you're concerned for that person's behavior, right? And you can do these things privately. The person won't always know that you were the one that reported them. Excuse me. So that's a way to delegate. You can also get mutual and friends involved. Like it doesn't always have to be this big official scary channel. Like maybe you're at a party and someone's being led upstairs and they can't consent. And you're like, hey, you get the host involved and you're like, hey, I think something's happening. Like, can you go check on this person? Or, hey, I think your friend is in trouble. Can you go help them? That's a way of delegating. And if something's happening online, elevating the concern to the platform. So whether that's X, formerly known as Twitter, or Instagram or whatever, there are ways to alert the platform to potentially get that person kicked off or blocked. Documenting. So we talked about Darnella Frazier earlier. These are other ways of intervening. So taking screenshots of things that are problematic or videos. If you are taking a video it can be really helpful to not just document the actual incident that's happening, but sort of get some landmarks and video other things that's happening, saying the date and time out loud, just so that, sometimes things can be altered. So these are just additional ways of verifying what you're documenting. So again, other ways to intervene without necessarily directly getting involved. And then finally, delay. So sometimes it's not safe for you to intervene immediately in what you're seeing, or maybe you don't hear about something that happened until afterwards. So you can still be a supportive person and an active bystander by following up with the person and checking in, letting them know that there are resources that exist on campus, that they're not alone, and offering their support. This is especially important, like when we talk about documenting or delegating. There are some instances where you don't want to get other people involved unless you have that other person's consent. So if it's a medical emergency, like obviously just get help. You don't want to check and like, are you okay? And then they're unresponsive. No, just get help. But let's say there's someone who you've learned has experienced some form of gender-based violence. You don't want to report on that person's behalf, or you don't want to get other people involved without that person's consent, because they deserve to take the lead in their own healing. Or maybe you've documented bullying or something that happened online. Again, you want to make sure that the person who's been targeted is okay with whatever you're about to share, and you're not just violating them further. So, but these are all ways that you can intervene. We just want to reiterate that when you do decide to intervene, that you're always prioritizing your own safety. It does not make sense for you to intervene and suddenly you're in danger and then another person has to come help, right? So sometimes it's just not safe for you to do it yourself, and that's when delegating is really important. Tighten your own digital safety. So make sure that your profiles are private. I know it's really popular to do like find a friend or share my iPhone location with other people. That can become really tricky. So making sure that who you choose to share that information with is maybe, a family member that you feel very confident that is not going to abuse that privilege. And never abusing or harassing back. We are in the business of stopping the cycle of abuse. So even if someone that you love has been harmed, it's never okay to retaliate. It's never okay to harass or abuse that person in response. That just further continues the cycle of violence. There are other ways to intervene, as we've talked about. The Good Sam policy is a policy that encourages people to be active bystanders. So I know that you've likely heard about this already, but if there's a situation where you and your friend or someone that you know is in need of medical attention due to alcohol or other drugs, if you call for help, so if you delegate, right, get campus safety or residence life involved, stay until help arrives, don't just leave. And then follow up with the university as to sort of what happened and how we can prevent this in the future. Neither you nor your friend is going to get an official conduct record. Okay, so it's a way to encourage people to be an active bystander. Also, we're not asking you to be medical professionals, but it is important that you understand the signs of alcohol poisoning so that you can get help if necessary. So those times may be if you've seen someone drinking and they're unresponsive, their breathing is abnormal, their skin is clammy or blue, they're puking, they're passed out, like any of these things, or you're just unsure, call campus safety, call Loyola EMS. So we're going to do a couple of polls, look at a couple of scenarios. So we're curious, how would you respond in these various situations? So the first one being, in a comment on a friend's Instagram, you see someone has posted sexist language and a racial slur. How would you respond? Would you be direct at the person and say their comment was not okay? Would you distract by posting a GIF of kittens or some other cute thing? delegate, check in with your friend, and inquire about notifying Instagram of the comment? Would you delegate by screenshotting the comment in case there's any follow-up your friend might want to do? Or would you delay, DM your friend and ask how they offer support? No right answer, just want you to start thinking about different ways of intervening. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll and share the results. So the majority of folks would delegate, check in with your friend and inquire about notifying Instagram. Great. Next, be direct, and then followed by delaying and distracting. Great. Again, there's no wrong or right answer. Sometimes how you choose to intervene is like proportional to how well you know the person, how safe you feel, all of those all of those types of things. Okay, next poll, I'm gonna launch. So in this scenario, you notice your roommate has been acting differently this semester. They are going out often and coming back very drunk many nights of the week. You don't notice them going to class anymore. What would you do? Would you one afternoon approach your roommate and then let them know you've noticed a change in their behavior, ask if anything happened recently and if you can help? Would you distract one night before your roommate leaves for the night, tell them you have an extra ticket to a show? Or would you delegate and fill out a behavioral concerns team report? Okay, I'm going to end the poll, share the results. Majority of people would be direct. That's great. Glad to hear it. That may be because you feel most comfortable with your roommate. There's not power dynamics at play, so you feel more comfortable being direct. Some people feel more comfortable distracting, or maybe you don't have a great relationship with your roommate and you just want to delegate it. That's okay too. All are wonderful options. Okay, last scenario. During a house party, you have seen a friend who has been flirting with someone new. You've noticed that she's drinking more than normal and getting really drunk. Towards the end of the night, you see your friend being led upstairs. Would you be direct, approach the couple, inform your friend you believe she's too drunk and needs to go home? Would you approach your friend, tell her you lost your purse and her wallet inside and you need help finding it? Or would you delegate, inform the host of the party that what you were witnessing and ask for their help? Okay, end the poll. Share results. Okay, so the majority of people would distract by telling them, hey, you lost your purse, got to go find it, followed by being direct. That's great. Again, sometimes it's, especially as someone who's really drunk, it's easier to just be like, not be direct. They're not going to maybe hear it, but distracting them can sometimes be easier. So absolutely, again, all of these, thank you for participating. All of these are totally valid ways of intervening. And again, it depends on your comfort level and what feels right to you in the moment. So in this last scenario, hopefully you would know that this person wouldn't be able to give consent. But go ahead and type in the chat, what are some signs that you know someone wouldn't be able to give consent in that situation? Stumbling, too drunk, stumbling, slurring speech, not able to walk straight, intoxicated. Yep. I think the biggest tell in this specific situation is that towards the end of the night, you see your friend being led upstairs, right? They aren't able to walk on their own. So there are a lot of ways that you can tell that someone is incapacitated by drugs or alcohol and that they can't give consent. And you've already heard us give the spiel about at orientation about consent. You've hopefully taken those online modules already. But another way to think about consent is like a stoplight. oftentimes when we're trying to navigate consent to see whether or not someone's saying yes, we wait for the red light. We wait for the clear signs that it's a no. I'm asking you to reframe that thinking, and instead of looking for the signs that someone says no, to start looking for the signs that someone's saying yes. What are the clear signs that someone is actively engaged and want to be intimate with you? So don't look for the red lights, look for the green lights. Want to make sure that you know what resources exist for you. Loyola isn't a bubble as much as we wish it were, and we understand that there are people who come to Loyola or while they are here may experience gender-based violence, which includes sexual and relationship violence, stalking, and harassment. That QR code on your screen, if you scan it and you haven't already, that will create a contact in your phone for the line. The line is our hotline for resources and support for relationship and sexual violence. We're confidential. Everyone in the Wellness Center is confidential. Everyone else is not confidential. So what that means is that if you disclose to your PA or your professors, your coaches, your RAs that you've experienced gender-based violence, they have a duty to notify the university, which means you're going to get an email from the Office of the Dean of Students just telling you what your rights and resources are. If you would prefer to speak to someone confidentially, reach out to us at the Wellness Center. Want to remind you all about the Wellness Center, that we're here to serve, we're free. We're on all 3 campuses. We offer medical, mental health, and health promotion services. That's us doing this presentation. STI and HIV testing is something that we also offer. We don't accept walk-ins, so make sure that you're making an appointment either online or through Dial-A-Nurse. And then hopefully you all have been compliant and have completed your online modules. Alcohol EDU and sexual assault prevention for undergrads. The deadline has been extended to the end of this month. So if you haven't done it, please do so. If you have any questions, ask that you reach out to alcoholedu@luc.edu. And then finally, just want you to know that there are ways to get involved with the Wellness Center on campus. We have 2 student organizations. The first one are our wellness advocates. They're our peer health educators. And then the next one we're going to be recruiting for this in just a few weeks actually is Change. So Change does programming on campus around gender-based violence. Actually, in just 2 weeks, they're going to be screening the show Heartstopper, if you're not familiar with it, and talking about relationships, some fun raffle prizes. So look for on our Instagram to get to hear more about that event coming up. And then again, you can go ahead and scan that QR code if you're interested in receiving the weekly newsletter that I send out. Next week, we're going to be talking all about our groups and things like that we offer through the Wellness Center. So it's a wonderful way to stay in touch. Any questions? I think I saw a couple come through the Q&A, but if you want to go ahead and type any remaining questions that you have, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, thank you so much for participating. I told you I'd get you out early. When should you use the blue light on the path walk? Does that call 911 or campus security? That calls campus security. So you would push that anytime you're feeling unsafe or need campus security support. Is there any attendance taken, or how do you guys know we completed this virtually? We take attendance when you sign in. So if you've signed in with your Loyola ID, that's how we know that you've completed the training. If you had trouble signing up, just let us know. We will still be able to, if you were able to, the way that we could tell if you signed in is if you are here. So basically we get a report at the end of every session that has everyone that's logged in. So that's how we're able to tell. I'm not sure if I signed in with my ID. If you signed in with your Loyola email, that's how you signed in. What if you could not sign up with your school, but could do personal email? Okay, so if it is personal email, if you signed in using your Loyola email, we've got you covered. don't worry about it. If it was your personal email, just ask that you email us so that we can make sure that we've tracked your attendance. But if you only use your Loyola email, you're covered. Don't email me. You email anyone on this screen. So any of the emails listed on this screen. Any other questions? If you came in late, if you were later than like 15 minutes, I'm going to ask you to come to a different training. We have 2 more left. Okay, I don't see any other questions. If you weren't later than 15 minutes, you're all set. Don't worry about it. There are no more online. This was the last online one. So we have a session tomorrow morning and a session tomorrow afternoon in Damon Cinema. If you got I appreciate how diligent you all are. If you're here and you're talking to me, you're fine. Don't worry about it. If you need to sign up for another training, again, go through Lou Community. Make sure you're signed in through Lou Community. But if you're here, don't worry. We got you. Okay. Any other training? Any other questions? If you're all set, feel free to log off. Thank you so much for being here. I'll stay in for another minute. But otherwise, y'all are okay. Thanks so much. Yes, if you registered with your Loyola email, if you logged into the webinar with your Loyola email, you should be fine. You should be fine. If you came in a little bit late, that's okay. Yep, you're good to leave. Thanks for being here.